In Module 2.2, we will discuss temperature. What does current temperature in Suriname look like? We're going to talk about some of the characteristics of temperature in Suriname and then look at what the trend has been related to temperature over the 1990 to 2014 average. So let's begin by talking about average temperature or mean daily temperature. Mean daily temperature is fairly similar throughout most of the country and is around 27 degrees Celsius, except for the southern border, where higher elevations lead to a slightly lower mean temperature. In terms of the trend, over the 1990 to 2014 average, we see an increase in average or mean daily temperature in the north and a decrease in the south. What about the maximum daily temperature? So the maximum daily temperature would be in a day, what is the highest temperature that you could experience? In Suriname, the maximum daily temperature is 32 degrees Celsius for most of Suriname, and its maximum values are found slightly inland and on the eastern border, where it is around 33 degrees Celsius. If we look at the trend in maximum daily temperature from 1990 to 2014, again, we see an increase in the max daily temperature in the north and a decrease in the center and the south of Suriname. And then finally, let's look at the minimum daily temperature. So in a given day, what is the minimum temperature that you could experience? The minimum temperatures actually show a slightly different pattern. They are higher in the coastal region, around 25 degrees Celsius, and they are lower in the southern region as you reach higher ground. So they would be about 21 degrees Celsius in the highest point of the country. The trend in minimum daily temperature from 1990 to 2014 shows an increase in all areas. We are now going to look at some maps to review the trends that I was just describing. And these maps are from the 2021 Suriname State of Climate Report. So the first map, the map on the left here, is showing the average mean temperature for the period 1990 to 2014. So what they did is they took the mean temperature for every year in that time period and they averaged all of those numbers to get one average. As we can see, the average daily temperature is similar throughout most of the country. We can tell this because it's mostly orange. Throughout the north and some of the central areas, we can see with the darker orange, the average temperature is about 27 degrees Celsius. And then on the southern border, where we would see higher elevations, we have a slightly lower mean temperature, closer to the 25 degrees Celsius mark. And we can tell it is lower based on the lighter orange color. The map on the top right is showing the maximum temperature for the period 1990 to 2014. So again, they took the maximum temperature for each of those years and they averaged them. And so we can see that the maximum temperature is about 30 to 32 degrees Celsius in the red color for most of Suriname. We can see the maximum values are found slightly inland and on the eastern border here in the darker red, where the maximum value is around 33 degrees Celsius. And then finally, the map here on the bottom right shows the minimum temperature over that same period, 1990 to 2014. We can see a slightly different pattern. So the coastal region is showing a higher minimum temperature, around 25 degrees Celsius. We can see by this kind of orange color. And then the minimum temperatures decrease as you move south. And as you get to kind of the southern border, we can see they're almost green, reaching 21 degrees Celsius in the highest point of the country. So let's describe some of Suriname's temperature trends. So this table is showing the trends in regional temperatures, again over the 1990 to 2014 time period. And this is from the State of Climate Report, where they chose to look at 7 regions in Suriname. So you can see them on the left here, as well as they're highlighted in this figure or this map of Suriname. So in this table, we can see the average value for the mean, max, and min, which we just described in the previous slide. And they also highlighted the rate of change per decade, so how the temperature is changing for the mean, max, and min over 1990 to 2014, and the probability of occurrence. So if we look here at the mean rate of change, we can see that the northern regions are increasing based on this positive value, and the values that are negative are showing a decrease in the mean temperature in the south. For the maximum temperature rate of change, we can see a similar trend. So regions in the north are increasing and they have a positive value, and then regions in the south are decreasing and they have a negative value. And then finally, for the minimum temperatures, we can see all of the regions have positive values except for Kwamalasemutu, which has a negative value and is showing a cooling or a decrease in minimum temperature. Before we discuss future projections for Suriname, let's discuss changes in average temperature. When we hear that average temperatures will increase by 1 or 2 degrees Celsius in the future, it may not seem like very much, but let's explore the impacts of just a small change in average temperature. We can think of it as a bell curve, which is the type of graph shown on the screen. On the x-axis along the bottom, we have temperature. The middle or the peak of our bell curve is the average temperature. On either ends, we have extreme cold and extreme hot, all the way over here. On the y-axis, we have the probability of occurrence, meaning how likely is this to happen? For example, how likely is it that we will have an extreme cold or an extreme hot day? Points that intercept higher on the y-axis are more likely to happen. So if I drew a line here, anything that hits it would be more likely to happen. Points that are lower on the y-axis are less likely to happen. So if I drew a line down here, that would be less likely to happen. Now consider what would happen if the average temperature increases by 1 to 2 degrees with climate change. This would mean our average shifts slightly to the right, and we now have a new average. With the shift in average, the curve now has more space on the hotter end. This means that hot events shown in light red that used to be more rare or less likely to occur are now more likely to happen. You can see by the larger light red space under the curve. This also means that now there will be even more extreme heat events shown in the darker red that may have never occurred in the past. This can look like record-breaking high temperatures. At the same time, this shift in average means that extreme cold weather can happen less frequently. This doesn't mean that cold areas will not be cold anymore, just that the average is moving and will be warmer. And this could look like minimum temperatures increasing, as we saw in the trends with Suriname. What will temperature in Suriname look like in the future? The State of Climate Report assessed 2 emission scenarios. So remember in Module 1, we talked about different emission scenarios. We talked about SSPs. The State of Climate Report looked at SSP 2 4.5, which is the medium or intermediate emission scenario, and SSP 5 8.5, which is a very high emission scenario. They also looked at several time periods, so they're using the 1990 to 2014 average as their reference or baseline period. And then they compared that to 3 different future time periods. They have a near future, a medium-term future, and a long-term future. So what can we expect in terms of temperature in the future? Related to the daily mean, minimum, and maximum, temperatures are expected to increase for both periods, or for both scenarios, over all of the time periods. The increase is expected to be less pronounced at the coast and more pronounced in the southwest region of Suriname. In terms of projected temperature extremes, There will be more days and nights where temperatures are in the 90th percentile. Let's explore this further, looking at some maps and data. These maps are showing mean or average temperature for SSP2 4.5 for the 3 different future time periods, so we can see the years here. We can see that the mean or average temperature is projected to increase. It is projected to change from 27 degrees Celsius, which was the average now, to 32 degrees Celsius by the end of the 21st century. And we can see the slow increase in mean temperature based on the change in color of these graphs. So as time goes on, the color gets, darker orange and then darker red by the long-term future time period. Not pictured on this map, but also under the SSP2 4.5. For maximum temperature, we can expect an increase from 32 degrees Celsius to 37 degrees Celsius. And for minimum temperature in the southeast of the country, we can expect an increase from 20 degrees Celsius to 24 degrees Celsius. What about for the high emission scenarios? So SSP 5 8.5. These 3 graphs are also showing the mean or average temperature for the 3 different future time periods, as you can see. So again, based on these graphs, we can see that projected temperature, mean temperature, is expected to increase and expected to change from about 27 degrees Celsius to 33 degrees Celsius by the end of the 21st century. And we can see this right graph has very dark red colors. Again, under SSP 8.5 for maximum temperature, we can anticipate an increase from 32 degrees Celsius to 39 degrees Celsius, so a few degrees warmer than the SSP2 4.5 scenario. And for minimum temperature, we can expect an increase from 20 degrees Celsius to 26 degrees Celsius by the end of the 21st century. By how much will the mean temperature change, and where will we see the largest magnitude of change in the mean temperature? These figures are from the State of Climate Report, and they are showing the average mean temperature anomaly. So scientists take the average mean temperature for the reference period 1990 to 2014, and then they also take the average mean temperature for the future time period, whatever that is, in this case 2070 to 2094, and they compare the difference between the 2 averages, and this tells us the temperature anomaly. These maps are showing the temperature mean anomaly for SSP2 4.5 and SSP5 8.5. And remember, this one is the medium emission scenario, and this one is the high emission scenario. Both of them are showing the long-term future period, so 2070 to 2094. We can see the projected increase in mean temperature will be the strongest in the southwest region of Suriname, and this is particularly pronounced for the SSP5 8.5, the high emission scenario. We can see the color is really dark brown here. And the mean temperature change could be anywhere between 5 to 7 degrees when we compare the reference period with the future long-term period. That is a really large increase. What about future projections for temperature extremes? Let's say we have our bell curve graph representing the range of temperature in Suriname. So this is all of the potential temperatures that could be experienced in Suriname. Anything within this region is considered our 90th percentile, and we might say this is an extreme temperature. Projections show that the number of days per year in which temperatures will fall in the 90th percentile is expected to increase for all scenarios and periods, and this will be most pronounced for the Big Pond region. By 2100, more than half the days a year could be in the 90th percentile everywhere in Suriname.